Hello, I'm Jeremy Anderson, a mass communications student at Jackson State University. I'm conducting research on desegregation and its effects on HBCU sports. I aim to understand the perceptions, relevance, and attitudes towards HBCUs through the realm of athletics. I will conduct qualitative data in the form of interviews in order to answer the research question, how has desegregation affected HBCU athletics? This interview is completely voluntary, and you may refuse to answer any question. You are also free to determine if you wish to cease the interview at any time. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to assist me in conducting research. So my first question is, first statement is to please state your name and degree.
Lisa Tony Smith, PhD.
And where did you complete your undergraduate and graduate degrees?
University of Washington in Seattle, Washington, and University of Chicago in Chicago, Illinois.
Okay. And can you remember taking research as an undergraduate student? You didn't take any research courses? Do you feel like that hindered you going into graduate school? Can you explain?
I had to play catch-up, so the first year I spent trying to learn what other people had already had 2 or 3 years to learn.
Okay. So you went to undergrad at?
University of Washington.
And what was your major?
Political science. And
there was no research methods course of political science?
There was statistics.
Did you do any research on your own?
It's for my coursework I did.
Okay, okay. What was the topic of your dissertation?
It was looking at how the community and where you live influences what I call your civic identity, whether you're interested in politics, whether you trust politicians, and whether you think you can make a difference.
Okay, and what did you learn from that dissertation?
I don't remember. That was so long
ago. What made you want to pursue that as a dissertation?
Because I was working in this area called Bronzeville, which is the Black Belt, which is where people moved to from the Great Migration, and there were a lot of people who lived there who were appeared to be very engaged in the community, and they were from basically all walks of life, really, from a single mom with like 6 kids and no high school, diploma, up to someone who was raised by 2 middle-class parents who were lawyers.
Okay.
So, and I was curious as to whether the community itself, living in that community and growing up in that community with its history and the types of people who live there, if that influenced people's politics. That's why I was interested in it.
Okay. Did you find any certain
trends?
Yeah.
Well,
trends.
I did find that people who, which according to the literature, who are raised to be politically engaged are. But those who are raised in the church, some of them were not raised to be politically engaged. They were just raised to go to church. But as they got older, church became a source of political mobilization for them. And I also found that a lot of people who live in the community use their job as part of their vocation to help people.
Okay.
And so, while that may not be typically what we consider to be political participation, or maybe more activism, but I did find a lot of people that they considered their job as a way to also give back and be involved.
Okay. Did you find yourself in the type of research were you doing? Did you find something in the research and you say, I belong in that category per se, or were you politically engaged like the people you were researching, or did you feel kind of outside?
I was a dissertation student. I was outside of all that.
Okay.
I wasn't looking for myself. I really was trying to understand more of the history of the community and learn about the people. That's what interests me the most, are the people and the history of the community. But I wasn't looking for any connections or linkages amongst my own beliefs or attitudes or anything like that.
Okay. So what type of research did you conduct? Was it qualitative or quantitative, and why or why not?
I did mixed methods. I did both qualitative and quantitative.
Okay.
So I did some quantitative statistics by using a data set, a large hand data set from the Roper Center. And then I did interviews with 25 people.
25 people? Okay. Did you have a certain sample characteristic that you were looking for?
Yeah, well, I was divided between male and females, those who were low income, those who lived in the housing projects, and those who did not.
Was it proportional to the people that lived in the area?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I hope it was, but I don't remember.
Okay. How important do you think it is for undergraduates to complete a course in research methods?
Well, it depends on what you're going to do. So, if if you're going to work at Tyson's Chicken Factory, then I don't think it's necessary.
Right.
If you're going to work at Walmart, I don't think it's necessary. But if you're going to work in any sort of agency in which they are doing work that needs to have measurable results, we need to find out that what they're doing, to have, whether it's sales or helping clients or whatever it is, then I think that you should understand research methods. As far as it's a way of thinking, it's a logical way of gathering information and data. It's a logical way of thinking about that data and that information. It's not opinion. A lot of students think that it's all about my opinion and what I think, and really, we really don't care about your opinion. It's really about what the data shows. And so if your boss says, hey, we got we put all this money into this new employee project, maybe it's employee helpful system. And we want to know if people are really using it, if it's helpful or not. Could you find out? And you guys say, well, okay, well, how am I going to do that? So you can sit down. I could call everybody one by one and ask them, so is this project helpful to you? Right? So that would say you need to do some surveys, right? And so it helps you to be able to answer a question, and whether you're just trying to build your knowledge up about something or whether you're trying to solve a real life situation or problem. So I think the undergrad should have it because of that. Just the way of thinking is different. That there are standards for conducting research, right? So it's not just I'm going to use all Clarion Ledger articles, or that there are standards for testing what's good information, what's reliable data. And so I think for those reasons it's important.
What difference do you think having an undergraduate experience with research would have made in your career?
I don't think it would have made that much of a difference, actually, for me personally. And that's only because a lot of what I've learned in statistics and about methods that I learned in grad school, I learned it, but I couldn't apply it. And so it wasn't until years later when I was doing my own research, independent research, and needed to teach myself some methods, and especially when I was teaching it, did I really comprehend what it was I had learned. And so I don't think that learning in undergrad would have changed that.
Okay.
I think I still would have came to it later.
Okay.
Statistics was a way of thinking, and that, like, I had statistics teachers who could only teach you statistics, and that was it. They couldn't tell you why. They couldn't tell you the theory behind why you use this method over that method. And that used to frustrate me all the time, because I don't care about the math. And to me, the math didn't matter if I didn't understand what I was doing and why I was doing it. And so I don't think that having that in undergrad would have helped me. Now, I may have been more familiar when I heard certain terms, like, oh, yeah, I heard that term before. And I knew some stuff just generally just from basic knowledge of reading articles and stuff, but it might have helped me a little bit as far as getting my master's thesis done maybe a little faster, but I don't know if that's really true or not, because I still didn't understand some stuff until later, until after I had to use it or teach it on a more consistent basis. It's like learning the language. If you don't use it, it doesn't stick.
Right. If you were a mentor to, a student, would you encourage that student to stress making sure you have undergraduate research experience?
I definitely would. I think it's valuable because an undergrad research is like a low cost and low risk behavior, right? You're interested in something, you find out the answer to something, and you write it up. But you can be interested in a whole lot of things that you can research, even in just your personal life. And so I would definitely stress it, at least learning the scientific method, at least knowing that.
Right.
And I think that itself is helpful when you think about how you want to go about answering questions, even in your own life, problem solving. What can I do for this situation? Here's the problem. Here's my options. Well, if I do this, this might happen. If I do this, this might happen. Well, So I think research kind of teaches you to be able to weigh, like, costs and benefits. So I think it's valuable in that. And I think, I did do research in undergrad, but I didn't necessarily do statistical research, and I did very well in my research papers that I did write that were informed by, models and watching how other people did things and stuff like that. So.
Okay. Why do you think students shy away so much from conducting or being involved in active research?
Math. Math. They always think it's math. That's the first thing. And then, honestly, I think a lot of students are lazy. That's just honest, because they don't want to they know there's a lot of work going in, and they don't want to put the work in. So they just kind of pretend that they're not interested, or it's not relevant to them. And then I think it's just the fear of the unknown. I really don't think I know how to do that. I probably can't learn it. Low self-confidence. But research, we do research every day. We just don't realize it. We just don't call it research.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
If you got $25 and you need your new book for class, and you got to find out who has it for the best price, you're going to do some what?
Research.
When you buy a new car and you have a couple cars in mind, you might do some research on those cars. What's the gas mileage? What's the wear and tear? How much does it cost to maintain them? That's research.
What do you think can be done to encourage more students to research?
Well, what have I done that's successful? That's a whole other question. But in my courses, I have, currently I'm working with students, my urban politics class, on a West Jackson research project in which the whole class is contributing to the project. And I tried to get at this topic on multiple ways by letting students be independent researchers and choose their own stuff, but I'm finding that the quality of the work that I'm getting is not satisfactory. And so this semester I decided I'm going to make everybody work on the same topic, basically just West Jackson, and everybody has to post their research and collaborate and look at each other's research. So I'm hoping that maybe by making it more of a community, we're all in this together kind of thing, that might inspire more research. I also try to share what I'm working on with students and upcoming projects that I'm thinking about. So I did get 2 students who are interested in this project that I'm going to work on that's coming up. So I try to do that. I encourage them to go to conferences. I encourage them to submit their own work at conferences that they're working on. To take part in summer research initiatives, things that we have that's coming up that's hard to get students to apply for those things because it's the same fears again, right?
Right.
But it's been difficult, I have to say. It's been difficult because just trying to get students to read in and of itself is just a whole exhausting and demoralizing task of working at Jackson State.
Okay. What are some areas in political science that you're working on now?
Right now, I'm just finishing up an article which looks at African Americans' attitudes towards immigrants, and if there are, I'm trying to make sure I got the right paper. If there are regional differences in African Americans' attitudes towards the growing immigrant population in the United States. I just finished a piece that looked at that examined the events in Ferguson by the racial theory of the racial contract. And Dr. Hill worked on that together. I also finished a piece recently that's under review that looks at African American attitudes about immigrants based on their religiosity, how frequently they attend church, how religious they are. And the project I'm trying to get ramped up, which is taking me a bit of a time, is a new project that looks at whether African Americans still lead in crime coverage news in places in which our population is 5% or less.
Okay. So what makes you interested in all this type of research, you're doing?
Well, I'm interested in the African American question because for the first time in a long time, African Americans are now 60% live in the South again. The majority of African Americans now live in the South again. And that's also the area where Latinos now, rather than going to the gateway cities, they're now going to the southern cities and Sunbelt places, and not necessarily urban southern cities, but suburban and metropolitan like Brandon and Pearl and Byron. And so black Southerners have, who are original Southerners, have limited contact with Mexicans and Latino immigrants. And also there's the history of race, the racial dynamic that's in the South. So I'm wondering how Latinos are going to fit into that racial dynamic, the black-white binary, if they're going to fit at all. And so these are questions that I think for the next 10 years provide a lot of source material for research questions because we don't know what's going to happen until we start going through these next 10 years and finding out. Are Latinos going to be accepted in the South? Are black people going to reject them, fear that they're going to leapfrog them politically? Or are they going to, coalition with them against white people? Or are white people going to coalition with the Mexicans, Latinos against black people? Right. So that's what I'm interested in that. And then I'm interested in the place about the crime coverage news because I just think it's fascinating that, I research racism and stuff, but I just think it's fascinating that whites do not recognize that they have racial biases and how the biases frequently play out in the way that we're covered in the media. And so I think that crime story coverage is a good way to look at that, particularly places where we're less than 10%. So we're less than 5%, then why are we featured so prominently on the news?
Right.
That's to me, that's just interesting. And then we have the technology for it now. Now we have access to supercomputers, the national crunch data, where supercomputers can crunch data for 15 cities.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I can't. That's a lifetime project. I'll just take that on now. And so that's why I think that's interesting to me too. Because now I think I'm trying to use more of the technology that's available to us that's coming out all the time. Like there's so much stuff out there, and so I'm just trying to stay relevant, I guess.
Okay.
In that sort of sense.
And do you have any suggestions for budding researchers?
For budding researchers, read the news, watch documentaries, read all kinds of books. All kinds of books, because you never know where your ideas are going to come from, right? You could be reading like this book, Black No More, which is a literature book. To me, it's fascinating, and it gets at questions of whether African Americans value blackness, right? But it's literature, right? So I can get an idea from just reading a literature book, like, do people really think like this? Would they turn white if they could? That's what the book is about, like, if you turn white. So read broadly. Read research materials, read statistical, read polls, read survey reports, read studies in the news about all kinds of stuff, even if it's just business. I read technology news every day, I read science news every day, I read business news every day, I read world news every day, because it helps you make those connections amongst things, right? So if you're only reading one kind of news, you don't know how that kind of news connects to other things that are going on in the world. And so research is also part of making connections among what appears to be disparate information. So, and it helps you train yourself to think that way, to make connections and look at patterns and stuff like that. So read broadly, go to research presentations and hear what other people are working on in research. Challenge yourself by writing, can I write a short paper? Can I do a 5 survey? And write that up, right? Just do little things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was my last question, so I really appreciate